Hello, hello, hello. We're back
Yeah,
once again. Look at that big smile, Jonathan.
dude, I just I really enjoy these shows. I hope our viewers online, the ones that are chiming in live, or the ones in the future, enjoy it too. It's just exciting to me to be able to do this.
It's always fun. It's a high point of the week, that's for sure. Not quite as I'll say. I started recording a new thing for Guide Point yesterday that should be coming out very soon. So that is it was a ton of fun to do that yesterday. But yeah,
You didn't even tell me about this secret new project.
yeah, secret new projects. You don't get to know about it yet. You'll find out when
That's okay.
everyone else finds out. Welcome to
Perfect.
everyone who's joining us live. And if you're watching this on demand after the fact, thank you so much. If you've got any thoughts or ideas or comments that you'd like us to see throughout the course of this, we can see those coming in live. So we can back and forth with you a little bit there. This is GPS Live for the week of January 20th. Or I guess the week preceding January 20th. We always say it's the week of, but it's like the end of the week. But for the work week
I'll take it.
January 20th, 2023. Jonathan and I are going to be talking about some fun news stories, some interesting stuff that we found. My name's Tristan Morris.
And I am Jonathan Singer.
And the first thing that we need to get out of the way is the fact that we are doing this show for Guide Point Security, but the views and opinions that we express are not necessarily the official opinions and views of Guide Point Security itself. We are just two dudes talking about cybersecurity.
We have a lot of opinions, and we're not afraid to say them.
Yeah. So that being said and out of the way, we do have some pretty interesting stuff this week, I think.
Yeah.
First things first is the return of I mean, it's not so ancient attack vector. It's been used before. I've seen it before. I've done work
Mhm.
related to it before. But there is a new blank image attack that's going around with some phishing emails that is hiding HTML script inside of SVG files. This one's yeah, like I said, it's nothing new, right? We've been dealing with stuff like this for a long time. Given the fact that there is a image format that for some reason allows full HTML to be embedded inside it, um, that is a pretty risky attack vector. But this one in particular, the reason that it stands out is because it's a new campaign that's going around that is impersonating DocuSign, which is
Mhm.
something that almost all of us probably have had to sign something or validate something through DocuSign for our work, whether that be employment agreements when we first started, or updates to policies that may affect us. We all get stuff like that all the time from HR and other places. So this campaign sends out a email that looks very much like it's from DocuSign.
Mhm.
And if you click on the view completed document button inside of it, it takes you to DocuSign. Like it looks legitimate. It takes you to the legit site. But attached to the email is a just entirely blank SVG that has embedded inside it the code that will automatically be read by the computer and smuggle all kinds of fun stuff to you.
Yeah. So there's a whole lot to unpack here with this, right? First off, I was mentioning to you before the show that the day and age that we live in, where
Yeah,
an image still has embedded HTML tags. Furthermore, HTML tags include JavaScript tags, and
yeah,
furthermore, JavaScript tags include the capability to manipulate information with regards to your, browser. And so it's a series of nested, we'll call them WTFs,
yeah,
and so this HTML file that is kind of secretly included as an attachment with these emails that you get for to kind of coax you into opening up and reviewing what has been completed, or write that call to action, view your document, sign your document, whatever it is. Because like you said, I get these things all the time too, right? We're dealing with contracts, we're dealing with
yep,
accounts, customers, and vendors, and on a regular basis. And targeting something that we're all familiar with is going to be very sneaky and very tricky here. And so there's a couple of layers, right? From a technical perspective, what's happening is using a base64 encoded string of data that is tagged as data for image SVG, right? So
Yeah.
scalable vector graphics. And then within that base64 encoded string, you just on base64 it. And that's where the script tag exists. And the script tag is part of where all the malicious things lie. In fact, it outsources and points at another hosted malicious file somewhere else on the internet. So this
Yeah.
whole chain of events where you open the HTML embeds an SVG has a script tag, and now we're in action.
Yeah.
Like you said, isn't necessarily a totally new thing, but the way they're going about it is quite sneaky in its
And
methodology.
all they're seeing is just the blank image, while that URL redirect is happening in the background, pointing them um, to whatever malware, I guess the attacker wants to send. Um, but I think the other thing about it is that uh, HTML formatting in an email and HTML in an email is so common that it slides right past a lot of security checks and a lot of controls that a lot of places might have in place. Um, and then you layer in the additional encoding and everything like that, and you're just adding layers of obfuscation on top of this that mean that this is, you know, it's not guaranteed to, but it's likely to get past defenses unless you have some really what's the word I'm looking for? Really specific controls put in place.
Yeah. Just so to put things also like to think about that, right? There may be a lot of security controls from an email perspective today to say do not load outside objects. But if
Right.
we're either embedding objects through encoded base64 as part of the document's body or referencing to maybe social engineer you into loading particular attachments along with that, those attachments do still have full executable rights in the sense that they can load external components,
Yeah.
whereas maybe the body of an email itself isn't necessarily always allowed to load external components. This kind of reminds me of a lot of like the tracking bit stuff, where it's like a 1 by 1 pixel image, and the concept of that being embedded on an HTML page and loaded is a
Yeah.
call home to some kind of advertising platform or data mining platform, and your get request of it, your hit per se, is what the metrics are built off of, because that can immediately capture everything from the type of
Yeah.
device that you're using, whether it's computer or cell phone, the browser, your pixels, I mean operating system. There's a lot of information that can be very quickly captured entirely based off of just the idea of loading something, making a call out, let alone bringing back something malicious and firing that off at the same time.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, to kind of button this one up, I think so that we're conscious of the time that we've got. I think I think this one really it I hate to say it, but it feels like this one is really just comes down to like more user education, right? About like when you're talking about phishing emails, uh, it can be tough sometimes, but trying to build an education around like, hey, this is what HTML is, and if you see embedded attachments or these types of things, if there's an attachment to an email, um, that is an HTML attachment, really make sure you know exactly where that is coming from before you execute it, click on it, anything. And beyond that, it's really only a matter of time until the incredibly smart people that we have across the industry working in incident response and working in their specific fields it's really only a matter of time before they start building controls that you can implement to try and catch this kind of stuff. But until then, this one really feels like it comes down to just like a user education thing.
Okay. No, I mean I dig it, right? It's if it's something we're familiar with, we may accidentally click it. We see these in
Yeah.
our targeted phishing campaigns that are regularly conducted. So just be a little bit vigilant, especially when it comes to attachments, especially when it comes to things that are going to take you off email to somebody else's website, right? But talking about being vigilant, right? I'll go ahead and try this transition here, but let's just go all the way in and say that even the CIA is in on it. Dun dun dun.
Yeah,
Um,
even the CIA. Yeah.
yeah.
We're just
So,
gonna really quickly. I just want to go ahead and we'll do that again. So there we go.
thank you. Perfect.
um,
So without going too crazy overboard, right? And let's
right.
reel it back in a second instead of potentially making some weird ideas out there. This article is coming to us from the Hacker News, and it's about leaked CIA Hive malware that has been discovered being used in the wild in
Yeah.
conjunction with some new backdoor capabilities. And it kind of is exactly as it sounds, right? There are a set of actors out there that are deploying some new backdoor capabilities and features directly borrowed from something leaked by the US Central Intelligence Agency. They have a platform called Hive, and it's more or less a malware suite. We'll just call it what it is. And a component of the source code from this Hive platform has been now witnessed as part of a new backdoor campaign.
Yeah, and this this is not a new thing, right? This has been kicking around since 2017 when it was leaked on WikiLeaks, when WikiLeaks released it originally in November of 2017. But being a extremely powerful tool and extremely powerful platform, as a lot of these government built tools are, it's still seeing a lot of use today. And so this one is a modified piece, like you said, of the source code itself.
Hmm.
um, it can be propagated using according to the article, an unspecified security vulnerability in some network tools and
Hmm.
network appliances. That feels like an incredibly unhelpful way to say it. What are you supposed to look for? But propagates through an unspecified vulnerability, and then it disguises its traffic.
Hmm.
Once it's been propagated, it disguises its traffic by pretending to be Kaspersky communications. So
Yeah.
it tries to look like it is a security tool within your environment. Now, obviously, if you're not running anything Kaspersky, that should be a dead giveaway right there. But it uses a forged certificate to try and obfuscate its own traffic. I mean, really, in the end, it's essentially a fancy command and control, right?
Hmm.
It's just a remote access tool and capable of doing quite a bit that's very dangerous for your environment. But it's the fact that it's built on these really powerful government tools that kind of sets this aside, um, and makes it pretty dangerous. Um, I think the other thing too, though, that I was looking at, it's the malware itself incorporates a trigger module, that so that when it lands on the system, it's not immediately setting up its full beacon and command and control capability. It can land there and stay pretty silent until it just eavesdrops on all the network traffic running through that system, and it looks for a very specific and specifically formed trigger packet. And then once it sees that's its Manchurian candidate, right? Like it immediately launches in then and can start operating from there.
Exactly. And so, part of the research into this current campaign using the tool is a focus on just that, right? What exactly is this command and control tool doing, right? So we're talking about stuff like harvesting sensitive information and launching, acting as that launch pad for subsequent intrusions. So they've taken, right, like you said, the Hive stuff, they've improved upon it. And let's remember here, right? This was from 2017 that it was initially leaked by WikiLeaks, and so 5, 6 years later, coming up, remnants of this are still, through a little bit of development effort, still actionable, still functional, and
Yeah.
being used by these adversaries. And this isn't the first time we've seen these kinds of situations. I was talking to you a little bit before the show about when Italy's own hacking team was compromised back in 2015. And hacking team also had a massive treasure trove suite of spyware, of tools used by nation states. And when they were compromised, all their stuff was dumped. And shortly thereafter, there was a whole number of malicious cybercrime groups utilizing this stolen code to build their own wares and to do their own campaigns. And so, whether it's developed by a government itself, in an example like this case, or one of these more boutique shops that sells its toolings to nation states, um, we're going to see a number of repurposings because of the fact that at the time they were O-days.
Mhm.
And maybe with a little bit of manipulation, they can be reworked into a new O-day. And it's a really tough kind of challenge here because these are extremely well funded research. So
Yeah. And I do want to go back really quickly to the trigger packet thing. What was I think I might have missed saying what I thought was interesting about it is that um, uh, the way that it's actually doing that is either the command and control and the beaconing are not hard coded into the malware itself, right? So the malware itself is just delivered. It doesn't really know what it needs to be listening to or where it needs to be communicating with. Instead, it just opens up some scanning on TCP and UDP and starts listening for a specific packet. And when it sees a packet come through that could be a match, it validates a checksum against that to see if the hash matches what it knows. So just that hash value is coded into the malware itself. So once it finally sees a packet come through that has that hash value, it says this is the one that I need to grab and unpack, and then
mhm,
it has its command and control and it's listening. And the reason that that's interesting is what that means is that this thing is not uh, once it's installed in your system, you can't rely on seeing beaconing activity or command and control activity from it going to a specific destination. It
mhm.
could lay there dormant for quite a while because it's just passively listening to everything that filters through those ports until it finds that one packet, and then you'll see it pop up. Which makes this I think a fairly dangerous piece of malware because it means that they can wait until moments where you're going to be the most complacent instead of just having to rely on getting it to you at that moment. They can get it some other time, let it lay low, and then activate it.
Absolutely.
Uh,
And to kind of, I mean, to add a little bit of further injury, insult to injury here, is because it is so focused around network related appliances and things are a little bit more considered unconventional computer systems. The discovery and the awareness of these kinds
mhm.
of command and control tool sets may be harder to find. It's not necessarily like it's landing on an endpoint where we have a suite of EDR tools, right? These may be landing on more of a closed source network compliance tool, which, albeit right at the end of the day, is still for the most part a Linux box.
Yeah,
But the ability to maybe root into those kinds of things, or the ability to get kind of insight into the platform to really see what's running, what's executing on it, is just significantly harder to do, right? Think of your home router. When's the last time you actually SSH in your home router to check out all the processes that are running on it?
yeah.
Just this ain't it adds just multiple layers of complexity that make this really difficult to pin down and fully understand and detect.
Yeah. And if you want to check, if you want to go find, sorry, this story on the Hacker News, the new backdoor created using leaked CIA Hive malware. They actually have a link to the Chinese researchers' full technical write-up inside there, which is pretty interesting to go through and see the full details of what they've done. But the Hacker News actually has also done a pretty great job of summarizing
Mhm.
that. So this is a pretty great story to go find. So, um, man, what kind of really sweaty transition can we come up with for the next
You
story?
no, you can. All right,
We
I'm
can
gonna
do
give
this. We
this
can
one.
we can we can we can work it back. We can work it back.
Go for it.
Yeah, let's see. This one was done by Chinese researchers. It is a vulnerability or exploited by unknown vulnerability, and it's
How about let's
listening
just talk
for
about
information.
trusting outsiders.
Trusting outsiders. Yeah, let's just go with that. Speaking of trusting outsiders, this last one is pretty interesting. So let me flip over to my banners really quickly. So this is one that you found, Jonathan, and brought to us for the show. But 18,000, almost 18,000. It's really, I think, 17,998 people that this letter was sent to. So almost 18,000 Nissan customers were affected by a data breach not at Nissan, but at a third-party software developer.
Yeah,
So
this
why don't you
is
take it?
not Nissan. Like, this is not on them. This is
Right,
on someone else.
right, exactly. So why don't you go ahead and take this one away?
Sure. So the article coming to us initially from Security Week, but Tristan was able to get a significantly more information coming to us from the record, is that Nissan relied heavily on a third-party developer and service provider, and this developer absolutely failed to do any kind of security checks by hosting a large set of customer data
Hmm.
in a cloud hosting platform that was publicly accessible. And this is directly related to a story we ran a couple of weeks ago, and directly related to a story we ran several weeks before that, where
Yeah,
cloud hosting platforms like AWS, Azure, GCP, and so on are going to have resources and utilities that can be public facing, that can be private, that can be public with security tools in place. And in this case, it was kind of one of those wide open free for alls. And
yeah,
so, to really kind of simplify it down, this impacted third party service provider that does software development on behalf of this car manufacturer, was simply hosting data and as part of their software testing, and it was exposed to the internet.
yeah. The information that was exposed, according to Nissan when they notified customers, included names and birth dates and um, Nissan account information.
Mhm.
Um, which, it's unclear, I think, at this time, if there's enough information once someone has your Nissan account, like what do they get access to beyond that.
Mhm.
um I'm not sure of what that contains, so it's kind of one of
You
those
can
things where it's
log
like,
in on your
yeah,
phone and turn the car on
oh,
remotely because they're
that
all
would be
connected. No, I'm just kidding. That's not actually what you can do.
uh,
But
that
interesting
would be
though.
rough. um but um yeah, so that's the kind of information that was leaked in this. So it's unclear, with just names and birth dates. That's not information that you necessarily want floating around out there for anyone to have, but it's not necessarily anything that's going to lead to like identity theft on just those two pieces alone. But then once you start layering in like what kind of information is available in a Nissan account, if that was exposed and bad actors have access to that, what information have you shared with there that could then be used to maybe verify your identity elsewhere? Um,
Mhm.
but they were first informed of the incident by this third-party company in June of last year, so June
Mhm.
2022. They verified it, I believe, in November. They like fully verified everything that had been exposed, and then they sent the letter out. Um, I guess this last week. Um, so okay, September 26th is when they verified that it had likely led to unauthorized access or acquisition of the
And
data.
verified is very specific here because the
Yeah.
investigation in September does mention that the data breach was found to have been accessed, right? So they did confirm that it was accessed and exfiltrated from the cloud-based public repository.
Right.
So it's not that this existed and was accidentally public facing. There was further confirmation that an outside party discovered it and exfiltrated this information. So
Yeah, and we've been talking for the last couple weeks. We've had stories, and in fact, over the last year,
months.
as we've been doing this, months, year, we've had stories where we've been talking about third party security, right? The basically being able to see the bill of goods, everything that's inside, whatever software you're using, how is that actually operating, and knowing exactly what you're exposing your environment to. Your third party vendors, like how are they handling data, how are they handling the security, and how are they handling things as they work with your organization. um, And this goes back to just the idea that when you're working with a third party vendor for really anything, it is vital now that you have very specific and stringent cybersecurity requirements that vendor can then basically they can be audited, and that vendor can prove to you, yes, I am meeting the cybersecurity requirements that you've set forward. Because if you're going to be trusting these third parties with access to your organization, with your data, with in this case, not only with the data, but also with coding things that are going to go into your product, right? This is a software vendor itself. So they were building platforms, or they were building things that were going to go into Nissan products themselves, right? So when you look at, hey, you're going to have access to all of your code repositories, we need to trust that they're going to be secure so that someone doesn't slip something in that then comes back around and turns back on us a year from now when
and
whoever it is
and
decides to use it.
this just makes me think about things like risk, right? In the
Yeah.
sense that, third party vendor risk, right? So I'm relying on other people to either write, in this case, develop applications for my organization. Can I trust them with customer data or access to my APIs to validate and confirm that these platforms are working effectively, right? And this
Yep.
is one of those weird things where if you are an organization and you're receiving a third party attestation to validate that you're doing things securely, like, this is not the opportunity to lie on one of these things. You put your company at risk when you do stuff like that. And so make sure that, when you're asked, do you currently use some kind of endpoint detection tool on all of your systems? Do you have multi-factor enabled, right? Stuff like that. Like, you have to be truthful, because then you're held liable. We see this also with cyber insurance documentation right now, where
Yep.
questionnaires are fair, for the most part, standard industry practices these days. And by simply not divulging all of the information appropriately when asked, you're either, giving some false sense of confidence to somebody you're working with that you've got things under control according
Mm-hmm.
to their requirements, or simply just making yourself liable, and that's not good business practice. So, everybody, there's only so much you can do when you're pushing out a request survey to other people, right?
Yep.
Yes, it does put them on the hook for when things go wrong like this, but there's a million ways that somebody may accidentally try to weasel out of it, right? File for bankruptcy, whatever it may be. So
Yeah.
it's always pounding in the back of my head, which is risk, risk, risk. How do you lower your risk? How do you mitigate your risk? How do you handle this? And this was a very big risk taken, and it sounds like it kind of went sour.
Well, and the unfortunate thing about stories like this, especially, is this is a very large, very well known company utilizing a third party service that is probably not known by really anyone outside of the people who need to utilize it, right? So I think one of the large risks too is, like, not only to your customer information and to your platforms, but also to your brand and your reputation. This story, every single version of it that I found, has said Nissan, 18,000 customers, data breach, and then buried in the story, third party vendor, right?
Yeah.
Nissan is going to have this attached to their name for years, and this third party vendor is probably going to go um, completely forgotten, right? I haven't
Yep.
found a single story that talks about who this third party vendor is. Not that I want to like dox the third party vendor or anything, right? But I just think it's important to recognize that when you're handing that stuff over, you're handing over your company's reputation and your company's good name as well, because it's
You're absolutely
more likely
correct, man.
you're going to be held responsible.
Absolutely correct. And yeah, tough pill to swallow.
So
You ready to round off this week?
let's round her off. The last thing that I want to mention is, as a note of good news, is that a decryptor was released for Beyond Leon ransomware. It's not a story that we threw in here to cover because that's about the extent of it. A decryptor was released. It's very cool. But you can go find that story floating around out there. Thank you so much for joining us this week for GPS Live. We will be live next week as well, same time, so 10:30 Pacific, 1:30 Eastern. And until then, my name's been Tristan Morris,
And I am Jonathan Singer.
and we hope to see you guys next week. Stay safe out there.